Welcome to Film Study, an All American podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi, and I'm hype because I have Monda back, but also K Ray, his first time on the pod. We love his YouTube channel. Always hilarious, always coming with the good content. So I'm super hyped to have him here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all of those things. But let's talk about Spencer's therapy session and what he learned in season 3 because he had some things to learn. Yeah. Just in general, before we get into the specific sessions, what do you think Spencer took away the most from these therapy sessions as a whole? Like, what did he learn?
I'm gonna let K-Ray go first.
I don't know if you want me to go first.
Yeah, go first. Go first.
I feel like what he should have learned is to not be Superman and to put himself first. I don't necessarily believe that that's drilled in just yet. I think he took like small nuggets or morsels from it, but overall, I don't, I don't know. I don't know what he learned.
Thank you, K-Ray. You don't have to hold your
Small
tongue.
morsels, aka just saying, Olivia, you can handle this on your own. Everybody else I can save.
You do not have to hold your tongue, K-Ray. Lexi and I do not. We do not hold our tongue.
I'm just thinking back, like, I don't know if he actually...
Did he actually learn? No, because it was a plot device for him to not help Olivia.
Right.
Let me not. I'm already... Listen, I took a little vacation from the pod, and so now that we're back in, I'm just like, no, again, and another thing.
I personally, I'm on the same line as K-Ray. It was supposed to have him help him put down his Superman cape, and I was here for it. I was like, yes, you can't save everybody. You need to concentrate on yourself. But then he did that for all of 2 seconds. Literally 2 seconds. And then he went back into Superman mode when it came to Jordan and when it came to things about his community and everything. So he really didn't like learn as much. Yes, he took a pause when it came to Live, but we'll digress on that for a second. But I really wish that he did like actually take care of himself, and hopefully it doesn't look. Hopefully, I would wish he'd do it in 4A, but all of this is about to like fall out around him, right? So we're gonna see if Dr. Spears is gonna be tapped in again because it's a lot that's about to happen.
He's gonna need a whole session.
You know what? I feel like Dr. Spears should be tapped in because as I went back and rewatched some of these scenes, I was just like, it's really interesting, and I will get into it when we talk about the sessions, but it just made me think. I'm just like, Spencer really does have issues with women.
Yes.
I'm sorry, audience. But I mean, at the beginning of season 3, it was interesting because, you know, okay, let's get into the first session because he brought up Jordan, he brought up Darnell, and he brought up sort of the whole football team. And Dr. Spears was just like, you know, that's all well and good, basically. But that's not sort of where your problems is. Like, problems are, even though you're stressed about those things, even though you're stressed about those people, maybe that's not where your problems are. And then we end up obviously finding out that his problem is Coop, and you know he has unresolved feelings for Olivia, and then he tries to save Olivia. But I just thought that was interesting, so I hope that in the next season we see Spencer. I don't know, and I know that he told his feelings to Olivia, but I don't know, being more upfront about his feelings and being more upfront about the fact that he can't save people before like he's forced to, if that makes sense.
No, it makes
that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So the first session. Manda, I know you want to talk about this, so go ahead and take it away.
So first of all, I want to give kudos because this is rare. So everybody listen to me. I want to give kudos to NK and the team. Actually, believe it or not,
this is incredibly rare.
This is incredibly rare, and that's because the idea of exploring student athlete in therapy was everything for me. I was so excited about it, and I was excited on how they set it up because true to form, if anybody's been through therapy or have gone through therapy like myself, there's like that intro session, and then it's that good to know, and then that first session of like what's truly on your mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so Spencer, being as he is, he does his research. And he tells the doctor he done his research on the psychomatic disorders, which kind of starting opening up the conversation about like what's stressing him and what's the issue at hand with his arm. Because one thing I can say about Spencer is he wants a quick fix. When
Mm.
he got shot and
Yeah.
they told him that he needed to like settle down a little bit, he went back before he was supposed to. So he wants a quick fix, and you will see that throughout the pattern of his sessions because he really wanted Dr. Spears to just heal him. Like, okay, let's talk about
Yeah,
it.
like give me the answers right now.
Give me the answers. And that's not how therapy works. And sometimes that happens with people like, okay, if I'm gonna go talk to somebody, maybe I can find out what's happening in one or two sessions and it'll be
Mm-hmm.
over with. And so when Dr. Spears said what stressed him out, he laid it all out. Everything that was going on with related to his boys and his community. But he failed to say anything about Liv. He failed to say anything about Coop. He failed to say
Yep.
anything about the personal stuff.
Layla?
Like Layla, yeah. He
Can
said,
we do? Can I? Sorry, can I bring this up for a
no,
second?
go
I
ahead.
just want to shout out again the fact that the reason why Spencer is in therapy is because Layla suggested it.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, and the reason I think, just based on what we saw from season two, the reason why he started doing sort of research on psychosomatic disorders, yes, he's like yes, he's very smart and he's very knowledgeable, but also I think it's because what happened last season is that Layla had depression and he was like going to research that. And so then we see like that's his first sort of real connection to sort of mental health and like exploring that for
Mm-hmm.
himself and doing research because it's it affected somebody close to him. And so yeah, it's really interesting that he was like all about like this is what's happening with me and my boys. Not gonna mention Layla, not gonna mention Olivia, not gonna mention Coop.
Not gonna mention none of the women who are creating this mental health issue. Because I think at that point he thought he was handling things
Yeah,
Yeah.
in his
That's
own
very
little
true.
unique way. I think he thought he was handling things. So that wasn't on his radar at all as to why he may be at the point of being in that office. And I like that Dr. Spears was like, that's all well and good, but all this happened after you were experiencing your injury and after you were
Mm-hmm.
experiencing a numbness in your arms. And so, and I like the fact that Dr. Spears talked about stuck points and how the brain skips over parts of the events and stuff that he needed to address. And so that was something that Spencer had to rectify and be okay with at the moment. That there's something that his brain just wasn't connecting with, and he's something he had to explore.
I
yeah,
agree. I agree. And I do like shout out to NK like you said that they even showed therapy in the black community because that's something that's usually shunned upon or not
facts.
talked about. And
Correct.
just like you, Monda, I still currently go to therapy, so I did love this portion of the show as far as the introduction and them and Dr. Spears actually going through the stuff because I'm like, yo, I sat in that same seat. Uh, I know about the whole stuck points. I know about the assignments they give you, all that good stuff. So I was happy to see Spencer there, and I thought that the season was gonna really like dive or unravel that part of the show. However, uh, that only lasted for a few episodes.
You were like, however, it did not.
it did not, and
It did not.
the
Yeah.
things that were talked about, I did love that he was peeling back the layers, saying, "Okay, yeah, that's nice that you talked about Jordan. That's nice that you talked about Darnell and everything else, but that's not the real reason here. Like that
Right.
surface level stuff, we got to get to the core of it." And when they brought up the stuck point too, because I initially knew it was going to be Coop, but then I thought that it was actually Coop and Olivia as far as, when he thought she was going to get shot and that whole aspect of it. And I thought they were going to really like dive into that yet a few episodes later.
Right.
He got rid of Coop and said it was
Yeah,
peace in that.
Yes. It, so it was
Got rid of her.
so okay, Ray, I was with you. I thought the stuck points were both Liv and Coop. And I was like, I
I
am
same
so ready. I am so ready. And then
same
when
same
we
same.
didn't get that, I was like, what? Okay, we're just
Yeah.
gonna aim on Coop. All right then, we'll just aim on Coop. And it like so he came to the conclusion of and we'll talk about that in the next session of
Hmm.
all in episode 4. Mind you, majority of these sessions happen in episode 4.
Yeah.
It was only until like maybe later on he did the one about Coop and Live separately. But all sessions happened in episode 4. So I was excited to see the exploration of it. But then to realize that it was just gonna be Coop. I was like, I want more than this. And I wanted to see it explore amongst like the span of it. But
Hmm.
we didn't get that. But I'm okay with what we saw and the authenticity of counseling sessions because I am still in counseling as well. So I'm happy you said that, K Ray.
Yeah, shout
So
out to therapy. It's
yes,
really great.
it is very great,
Big
particularly
Because
facts.
you
during this
think
pandemic
just
time.
a little interlude here
Yes,
is I feel like you know you walk into sessions sometimes. I'll never forget one of my mentors saying this, but you walk into sessions sometimes and you're just like you feel like you're crazy and insane, and going to therapy just helps you realize because your therapist is like, no, you're not crazy, you're not insane, you're just a human being. And we go through things and we have to talk that out, and we have to you know go to someone that is like far enough away from us to see it and obviously qualified, but to see a whole picture for what it is, because we're
Hmm.
too close to like what's going on in our life.
it's.
All
I
right.
also. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I agree with that. I agree with that. Go ahead, Monda.
I also like that Dr. Spears explained to him that it can be a thought. The stuck point can be a thought, an event, or a
Yeah.
person, and it's not.
Yeah.
And they just had to work on it together and figure out who that is, what it is.
Hmm.
And as Spencer was he ready to put in the work. Now at the time, Spencer was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to put in the work." Little did he know what the next session was going to do for him.
Spencer wanted to be ready for the game. I don't know if he was necessarily ready to put it. He was just like, I'm ready to do whatever can help me with this next game. And then he was
Right.
just like,
I want
oh,
to
it's not a
win.
like I'll be healed by the next game type of thing. Okay.
Very much so.
I know I was like that. Not as far as the game, but I wanted the whole thing wrapped up.
Yeah.
So I
It's
got
a
that
very
part.
real sentiment. I love the way that I love the way that they broke down that first session, because it is
Hmm.
like, and getting into the next session, it's like sometimes, at least I have tried to, like, I don't know, like outsmart my therapist.
Yeah,
And be
I
like,
tried
I
it
could
too.
just tell them this.
And the therapist can see right through you.
Yep.
Yes.
The therapist is not only paying attention to your words, but they're paying attention to your body language and how you're saying your words. As Dr. Spears caught Mr. Spencer in the next section, um, when he
Go
asked him to walk
ahead.
him through the night of the shooting.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I'll let K Ray take this one if he wants to, because I got a lot to say.
Oh.
Uh, I got a lot to say about this next session.
Right before we go into this session, I'm sorry, this the psychologist in me just won't let me. It's unconscious, not subconscious.
It's okay.
That
It's
just really bothers me. Every time I hear it, it's like my little like psychology 101, like
oh,
freshman year, is like in my head.
I
Sorry, go
know,
ahead,
I
K
know
Ray.
it's unconscious, but I had to write it towards the transcript, so I was like, oh,
Oh no, 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 no! I meant for the writers. I meant for
yeah.
the writers saying like subconscious, and I'm like, it's not that. NK, you got it wrong that time. Sorry,
I,
K Ray, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I
Carrie,
was
I'll
gonna
let you
jump on that
start.
bag, but I'm gonna leave NK alone for now.
See, and now it's not just me, Lexi.
For
It's not
now.
just me. It's
Hey,
not just
I
me,
just called her
Lexi.
out. It's like, you gotta get those terms right. You gotta get those terms right.
All
So
right, go
I
ahead.
I actually like the next session because this is when Dr. Spears was asking him to walk him through the night that when he got shot, and Spencer goes into like detailing like what happened at the cotillion, and he was celebrating his quote unquote homie Olivia, and and because he brought her up, Dr. Spears kind of like honed in on that and was like, "Oh, that feels like an interesting focal point. So tell me about her." And
not only her hope, but like all the dope stuff she's been doing in the community.
yeah.
Like this is some superfluous information, Spencer. Like what's going on here?
I don't know what it is because as a guy, I don't know why we do stuff like that. I don't know if it's like hardwired, but I know I just said some lines like that before. When you can clearly be like, "Oh, your homie, huh?"
But
Dope
he
stuff.
was lying from the very beginning, and Dr. Spears was like, caught
he
it.
was.
Especially when he was like, "Why?" I was like, "Oh, you about to lie?" The minute you said that "why" that way, bro, you about to lie.
And not Dr. Spears saying humor me. He was humored. He was humored because he was just like, "LOL." Okay.
And I like the humor me part because sitting in that chair, I think that's a very smart thing to do when you a therapist, because you can get people to kind of like show their hand without knowing that they're showing their hand. Because if I talk about certain people and you say, "Just tell me about them," I'm gonna go in like full out, and that's exactly what he started doing. Olivia, man, that's my day one. Like from that line right there, I was like, "Yep, your homie, right?"
K-Ray, when he said day one, I screamed at the television because on your community channel and someone else, I was like, Liv has been his day one from day one. I've been saying it over and over. So I screamed, like, I am validated. I am validated.
Well, the other thing, the first time I saw this episode and was watching that, I was just like, his British accent came out. Like that's what I was focused on for something. Because like, Olivia, I was like, this must be an interesting seed for Spencer because his British accent doesn't typically come out, and it was coming out, sir.
I didn't even catch that until like second watch.
My family is British. My ears are attuned to that stuff. I was like, there's not an R in I'm kidding.
He was very detailed. Like he remembered everything. Everything.
He was.
Oh, so much.
The first person he met, we got the Beverly bonded on chromosomal DNA. Who put that sentence together? Dr. Spears had to laugh. Then he said, "We vibe over everything. It's hard to explain." I was like, yo, just tell us, man, you in love.
He was very careful, though.
He tried to be.
Yeah, he tried to be because he was like, we get each other. Like, yeah.
This man.
But then he said the next line, though. That's why it was so easy to jump in front of her when I saw the gun. Like, if that ain't love, it's either love or stupidity.
Because it was love because just the session prior, he had told Liv he'll do it again. He was, remember they were in a hangout, he's like, and I'll do it again. Bro, you know you in love. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's just like, all of what he said, though it was like semi-relevant, it wasn't really relevant to the question Dr. Spears asked. So it was just like he's going on this whole tangent about Olivia, and it's just like, in the shooting, like what happened with Olivia at the shooting. I didn't ask you about your first days in Beverly, bro. And then all of that, oh yeah, and then that's why I jumped in front of her. Said all this stuff.
That's why.
What was I talking about again?
That's why he went and said your feelings for Olivia aren't complicated. They're clear. Like, we ain't worried about that.
Not at all.
Like, it's clear that you're in love with
her. The funny thing is, like, throughout this whole part, up until he tried to deny what he's feeling for Liv, he was calling her Olivia the whole time. Olivia. But then he's like, nah, Liv's just my friend.
Yeah.
He all like going back and conscious about it. Boy, you know.
I didn't like the next line.
You,
Oh, when he said Layla, Layla, that's my girl. I love her.
Yeah,
the way
like,
the
right.
oh,
way he said
come
that,
on.
like, bro, that's my girl. I love
Like,
her.
yes, he had love for
Oh.
Layla.
He had a little. He tried to like deepen his voice a little bit, have a little bit of bravado. I love her. I'm like, bro, I could not.
I just needed him to settle into the fact because at that time none of us saw Seven, right? None of us
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
Seven. I had guessed he was in love with her because of the hangout piece. And so
Hmm.
you had people after the session like freaking out because there's the debate, right? You had people like, yes, you're in love with him, fool. You had the Spayla fans was like, no, he's not in love with Layla, blah, 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 blah. And then you had the Spencer fans was like, Spencer will never lie to a therapist. He knows
Oh
his
wow.
feelings. I was
I
all
ain't never
across
heard
YouTube
that one.
channels at the time. Oh yes, I was across multiple YouTube channels during that night, and I was cracking up at people. I was like, "This
You
dude is
said I
lying."
did the research. I have the receipts.
I have the receipts, and I am on different channels. You can see my comments. I was laughing at people. I was like, "Are you serious? This 17-year-old boy is lying to you all." And they're like, "No." And I had some Spayla fans who were going back and forth with me, and I said, and I told them, "You can find me here when the truth comes out." Haven't heard from them yet because the truth came out. I was like, "You know what it is. You right now you see one thing because you want to see it." As you see it, as you knew Spencer to be, right? Spencer's this person
Hmm.
who's honest with his feelings. Spencer's this person who will tell people the up and up, particularly a therapist. But the fact that he just lied blatantly in this therapist's face and the therapist knew it was so funny. It was completely funny. Because after Seven happened, everybody went back to that scene and was like, Spencer lied. I was like, no duh. Like if you were paying attention, this boy said it
Well,
all over
and
the
I
screen.
think and I think that he was trying to tell himself a story.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we tell ourselves story, fact versus fiction in the stories we tell ourselves. And so, even him saying you think she's my stuck point, he was just like, like in my mind, I'm like, he was like, ooh, this is kind of an out. Like maybe this is why this is why I've been feeling the way I've been feeling because she's my stuck point, or so just anything to get over the hurt of her leaving in Vegas.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
give
He was just trying to dodge it.
I'm gonna give a shout out to you, K Ray, because if anybody wants to see the recap of season four, episode four, and listen to K Ray's part when he asked that question, it's completely hilarious. And the expression that K Ray gives to the video, I was like, that is telling. It's completely telling. So I'll give a shout out because that was one of the best like reviews of that session that I seen. So I want to give you a shout out for that one because that one you did a good job. And often I don't give K Ray shout outs. He will tell you that I come for his neck every chance I get.
Oh.
You
That's
sure
what our
do.
relationship is. So
You
that's why
sure do.
he's in total utter silence right now because
I
um,
appreciate it.
he
I
knows
appreciate
I
it.
will come for his neck on comments. So yeah,
I would have to go back and watch it to see what I said,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they all kind of like running together. But uh, I wasn't feeling Spencer when he said that whole Layla, that's my girl. I get that at a time or at a point you did love her and you still have love for her, but I mean, I didn't have to see Vegas to know that he wasn't in love with Layla at that time.
Right, and you were
yeah.
also at that moment I consider a problematic relationship with a young lady when the fact that you were in love with her best friend
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
were dating at that time too.
I didn't like that part.
Didn't like it at
I didn't
all.
like that because Layla got dragged.
And he had just this is coming off three where he basically just sidestepped the whole issue because she asked about Liv and he was just like, my arm, it hurts. But maybe Dr. Spears did the whole thing because he was just like, you're in love with her, your feelings are clear, and he was just like, okay, maybe you're not ready to admit that, but
Yeah,
let's get back to your
let's
arm.
let's table this discussion.
Let's table this discussion. Let's get back to your arm. And he says, who do you hold responsible for the shooting that night? And he says Tyrone, and goes into him setting the whole thing up. But it's funny because when I rewatched that, he didn't even seem convinced of it. So yeah, he didn't seem convinced that he held Tyrone responsible for me.
I didn't think so either. I think that he kind of knew in his head that he who he thought it could be, but he was like, no, since Tyrone was the one who possibly put the shooting together, that's who he's going to like contribute to it at that moment. Like he knew his
Mm-hmm.
feelings for Tyrone was like hatred, and yes, he may have caused for like the shooting to happen, but I don't think he was like convinced in that space either.
Me either. I agree with all that.
Because Dr. Spears is like, who else? Like, who else do
Yeah.
you blame? Do you blame yourself? And it says it does not have to be a person. It can you could blame it on the circumstances. And at that point, Spencer was like very hesitant. He's like, I don't know. It says I need some time to think on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which at that time, I think I'm just me personally. I think Coop was creeping in his mind, and he was trying to shut it down. I think he
Same.
was trying to shut it down.
Same.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So he had
Yeah.
go ahead.
And so to unlock that, right, he did with what a lot of therapists do, which is gave
Yeah.
him homework and said, so write it down, do a narrative, and you know, knowing that that would allow him to be a little bit more free to actually say like who he blames for it. Um, and then so at the end of that episode, we get Spencer's voiceover saying who he blamed. And the next time that they're in a session, Spencer reads that narrative that Spencer wrote down, which he says, you know, in so many words, it took me all this time to realize that I took a bullet for a friend. That friend wasn't Liv, it was Coop.
Mm-hmm.
And I blame Coop.
But
Also, sorry, not Dr. Spears saying this is really good.
I think it was like this is really good for him to actually write it down and
Yeah,
own
that's what
it.
I thought too.
I know, but it's no, it absolutely is. But like reading it, it's like I blame Coop. This is absolutely correct. Like Dr. Spears is everybody who like has just been hating on Coop for the past couple. Yes, it's Spencer. This is what we've wanted you to realize.
See, and it's funny because there a lot of people want to blame Coop for the shooting. I also kind of blame, and people get upset with me, Spencer for the shooting as well because
Oh
he was
no,
in
I think it's
Tyrone's he
both
was
of
all
their
in Tyrone's
faults.
face the day of the shooting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I agree. I blame both. I blame Coop for trying to get in the streets when you know you ain't built like that, and then two,
Yeah.
Spencer for still trying to play Superman when Coop kept telling her, leave it alone. She can handle it. He should have let her handle it. And yet you ran up on Tyrone twice and almost got shot twice. Well, you did get
yeah,
shot the second
he
time.
did get shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only did he run up on Tyrone, before that he ran up on Sean.
Yeah.
You know, he had some words for the uncle at one point. Like, yeah, Spencer just be doing stuff sometimes,
He
and
did the thing at the park too.
I
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what. So it's he. Yeah, I've said this before, but I think sometimes Spencer can be
Yes.
impulsive.
Very.
And when he was saying his like when he was we heard the like voice of his like
Mhm.
narrative at the end of 4 that Dr. Spears ended up reading the latter half. He was just like, you know, I told you not to get involved with Tyrone. I told you to leave it alone. And I'm just like, that's a little bit of projection, sir. Because yes, while I do think Coop was like way out of pocket, Coop also told you to leave it
Right.
alone. Like
Yep.
she was just like, just let me deal with it. Like like basically be in Beverly. You have this good thing going. Just let me do me. And he didn't listen to
Mhm.
her, and so though I put it majority on Coop for starting things off, Spencer definitely is accountable for some of that too.
Yeah, because even when I think what was it, Flip that said that Tyrone can't touch the James family.
Yeah. That was what Flip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, you still went up and got in Tyrone's face yet again.
Uh-huh.
And technically, he didn't touch the James family because it wasn't supposed to be Spencer.
Mm.
It was supposed to be Liv to send a message to them.
You
But
believe it was
Spencer,
supposed to be Liv?
yes,
no,
yes,
Oh, wait a
we're not
second.
doing that
yes,
here.
that was supposed to be
Wait.
Liv
Why do
Yes,
you
please
think?
tell
Why do
us
you
why
think
it's
it's
supposed to be
supposed to
Liv.
be Liv?
because Just that's just common street knowledge. Like if you got the OG telling you you can't do this because of retaliation, and Tyrone is not just street smart.
Uh
He
huh.
was smart overall. So to find a loophole in that is I'm not gonna touch the James family, but I'll touch someone around the James family.
So
Therefore it'll still
okay.
send the same message.
But how would they know that it was Olivia that was around the James? At that point, she hadn't been hanging
Right.
out
She's
with
never really been
Spencer.
in the neighborhood. And the last thing we saw was we saw Tyrone seeing him and Darnell in the park. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I find funny, because that's what you say, and I know some people in the street game, and they was like, no, they was aiming for Spencer. I had them watch the scene. They're like, no, they're aiming for Spencer, but they was trying to get Spencer away from the neighborhood, and Liv was there at that time. So you think it was Liv?
This is a very
Yes, I think it
controversial,
was.
like who was
Who
the
was the
gun
gun
aim?
aimed for?
I mean, it still would have got the message across, but I do honestly think it was, especially based on how NK writes, it was Olivia.
That's
That's
interesting. I
interesting.
still said it's Spencer and all his fault, but that's okay.
But I mean, the message still was clear.
Right, very
But
much so.
The message, yeah, yeah. The end result is clear, even though who the gun was aimed at and was intended for is a
Right.
little murky. But yeah, no, the message was clear, and then Spencer is just like, Dr. Spears, do you think I'm right? Is Coop my
this is a part I
You think
don't
stepson?
it's
like.
a stuck point.
This is the part I don't like from Doctor Spears because he says I do. Like I don't remember one therapist, at least on my end, that was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." No, they make you figure it out.
And help you explore it. Yeah,
Yeah.
They
very
don't be
much
like,
so.
"Oh yeah, I do." Loving Coop and blaming Coop. Like I did not like that at all. I'm like, no, let him figure it out because at that time I was still thinking it's deeper than that. Yes, it's partially Coop, but I'm like, it's Liv too.
Yeah, and the fact that she was in that
Well,
situation.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it and in that, when I was watching that episode, I was just like, again, having studied a bit of
Yeah.
psychology, therapy and counseling isn't my thing, but um having just studied a smidge of it, it's that's too easy of an
Yeah.
answer. Like, you can't just, come back and say, like, yes, I haven't figured out this is the source of all of my problems, because life is more complex
Hmm.
than all of that. And so yeah, I didn't like the fact that Dr. Spears said I do. I think that I originally took that as him being like, I mean, I do, if you're saying that, she is your stuck
Yes.
point. Yes, because you said it. But I thought at a later date again that we would get him like thinking about Coop and Liv, and thinking about how he almost lost Liv,
Hmm.
and that
I
whole
was
thing too, which we did
yeah, I
not
was on
get.
that same trajectory because that's what I wanted to see. But I will get that in a fanfic and not on my TV screen. But it's okay. But what's interesting is that Spencer had instantly was like, "Can we get this all done by Friday?" He just wanted to
Yeah.
get it over with. He didn't even want to dive into Coop being a stuck point. He
Nope.
wanted to just be like, "I want to get back on that field. I want to win." Because they at that point they were like 0-2. And Dr. Spears had to like bring him back, like, okay, but your arm, like, let's come back.
Hmm.
Let's come back to why you're in here. You're not trying to get on the field. We're trying to figure out what the issue is.
Yeah, yeah. And he eventually tells Spencer that he needs to
Yeah.
tell Coop, and that's his only way to heal. But I kind of want to transition into the next session, which is 9, which, oof, I'm gonna try to be as fair to Spencer as possible, but because y'all already know how I feel about episode 9. But I do think it's interesting that, in between, what is it,
Yes, fine.
5
Mm-hmm.
and 9, like, granted, obviously time had passed, but in between 5 and 9, Spencer had gone from being focused on football in these
Hmm.
sessions, and like focused on, I gotta get back to football, to uh actually taking therapy seriously. Like, I don't know if I we not to say that he didn't take it seriously before, but it wasn't about him like figuring out his triggers necessarily. It was like him figuring out his triggers so he could get back on the
Hmm.
football field. And so I don't know if for me I saw enough growth in that area for him doing what we saw him do in 9,
I
if that
agree.
makes sense.
I agree.
I agree. I feel like the writing was a little iffy, shaky most times, and a lot of stuff was like, uh, I would say told rather than showed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not told or shown.
or
Let's keep
not
it
told.
real.
Yeah,
Let's keep it real funky in this bug.
like the summer.
This is true. Suddenly Spencer's telling, I mean, this is beyond, but suddenly Spencer's telling Jordan, "Oh, you gotta go see my therapist." Sir, you were just talking about getting on the football field. What?
So yeah.
I just got to take a deep breath.
But yes.
Yeah.
Spencer called Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Spears because this is when they had all figured out that Liv was
This when Mama
relapsed.
Grace got in his neck, or
And
just was that before or after?
This
what did that
this
happen
was
before or
this
after?
happened after.
After,
I want to say
yeah,
after.
Yeah,
yeah. See,
Mama Grace
I
said
was
he
like,
was
you
sitting
supposed to
at
stay in
home
the
looking
house.
at the
Yeah,
looking at Miss calls that Liv didn't pick up and Miss FaceTimes that Liv didn't pick up.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Because
he
I
was
was
sitting
like,
at the table.
you supposed to still be at that table, but go ahead.
Um yeah. And he was just like, he felt like it was all his fault, Liv running away. And Dr. Spears was like, "Why do you constantly carry the blame for other people's choices?" Anyway,
Get into it. Get into it.
because like, okay,
Get into it.
sure for Liv, but again, Spencer ran up in Tyrone's face. Like, I don't know if you could necessarily say that he was carrying the blame, aka taking the shot for Coop's choices, like solely. Um, yeah, I mean, just what we've been talking about. And anyway, basically, he was Spencer said, "Oh, I knew that Olivia was going to be sent away, and I told her parents
Mm-hmm.
anyway." And Dr. Spears was like, "Okay, maybe you could be right, you could be wrong, but you can't save Olivia from her addiction." So that was a really good
Yes.
thing for Dr. Spears to say. Like, maybe you're right,
Can we
maybe
talk
you're
about
wrong.
that for a second?
I Can we talk about it, because I'm reading this and I'm like, he should feel bad for not taking her parents aside.
I'm okay. I'm okay with as long as I was very happy that he told. Like I'm to this
Me
day
too.
very hopeful.
I
I'm
was
very
very glad that
glad.
he told. I wasn't glad for the way in
Yeah,
which he
because I'm
told
sorry,
it, but
Simone didn't need to know about her business. I always say that to this day, but that's okay. It came out, and I'm very happy for it. But one of
they not even
yeah,
sister-in-laws anymore.
and they barely like, interacted at that time on screen. They could have done a lot off.
Literally, and Simone was more worried about Jordan than she was about Olivia after that. Anyway, let's stop.
But I definitely want to sit in the fact that what Dr. Spears was like, you can't save Olivia from her addiction because a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
over and over goes, he saved her and he saved her. I'm like, no, he told which he needed to do, but only she could save herself. And I said
Facts.
when
Yep.
if you want to talk about her addiction and someone truly saving her, Jordan saved her when she overdosed. He saved her and her family saved her. But as far as her path of her like healing herself and everything, that is her. That's why on my one rant, I was like, he's not going to need to save her because she has to walk through that truth. That's going to be her truth for the rest of her life. Should he be
Yep.
in her life or not? That's her truth. She has to be the one to save herself. She has to be the one to make that decision for herself. Only she can do it. No one else can do it. And I'm gonna say that till I'm blue in the face to all the Bolivia and Spencer fans. That man, young man, cannot save her from her addiction. Only Liv can do that.
That is big facts.
And even if he attempted to, which he did not because he did not get the opportunity, it still wouldn't be
Right.
saving.
He would have helped
Nope.
in that moment.
That's kind of like
He just helped
what
her.
Carrie said about Layla when she was
Yeah.
talking to
What was it?
Liv in the kitchen,
Oh yeah.
and
What?
I'm basically saying that in my own words that Layla basically saved herself
When she was
or
at when
helped
she was
herself.
there. Yeah, she helped herself.
Yes.
and Liv was like, well, I was there and we helped her. Liv and
Yeah.
Spencer, like they did the intervention, and they
Mhm.
were the ones to like try to call attention to it. But Layla had to be the one to take that walk.
Yep.
She had to be the one
Exactly.
to say, I want to go through
Exactly.
therapy. She had to be the one to say, Dad, this is what I'm going to do. She had to be the one, sometimes even reluctantly, be in those sessions. She
Mhm.
did that work. So, yeah.
And to that point, I think pointing to Layla is a good example of, you know, support, or at least in that moment for that second, because we saw, what did we see? We saw Olivia going to her rehab
Mhm.
place to talk to her. In like just in that, like we saw Olivia go there and talk to her as, you know, she was in the
Yep.
place.
And they're all there when she got out, even her dad.
So let's talk about it because
Yeah,
Liv was
when she
all
got
the
out.
way through
So
there.
let's talk about in that in
Yeah.
contrast. But let's talk about how I want to say this too, because we've talked about this, me and Monda, I think, like in our sort of in our
Mhm.
crew, in our group. But Olivia was the only one to go visit Layla, like while she was
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
rehab center. Like, yes, Spencer was there at the end, but it's the men on this show have been shown more support as a whole in terms of when they're going through
Yes.
things, um, than the women have, and those are just the
Those are the
facts.
facts. We have full on receipts. Do not play with us. Full on receipts. And
We do, because you look at and you're just like, oh, you got to take these next steps on your own. Let me not go in on Spencer James, but the next time we hear Spencer James after he's just like, goodbye, get out of my house, is, oh yeah, your recovery comes first. For who? Because you didn't mention it in the past five
let's
at
not
no.
let's
episodes.
not get on that line.
And in between, hold on, wait a second. In between that, you took all the time and energy to make sure Jordan got every help that he needed. And you sent everybody to him. JJ, you asked Liv about him. You did sessions with him. You sent him to Dr. Spears. But then when Liv comes up, dead silence.
That's
And that's and to our point about women again not having the same support system, look at who pulled through for Jordan the episode after he had his whole concussion thing. um JJ's coming by the house, Asher's coming by the
mhm.
house, Simone's checking
Billy
on
comes
him,
to the house.
Billy comes to the
Mhm.
house. Obviously Spencer sends people to go. Like, oh, Billy's sending people, Spencer's sending people. Like, what? Why is there a discrepancy?
Well, you're gonna have to talk to the good old creator of the show, because
Oh yeah,
I think I'm
absolutely,
done fighting that
absolutely.
fight
K
on
Ray, I will. K Ray, you can fight this fight with me. Well, actually, you can fight because I'm off of social media, so you can fight it on my behalf.
I think I'm done fighting the fight. I didn't said it till I was blue in the face. I said Layla got a better presentation of when she was going through depression. Like, they actually handled that with care, I think.
Yeah,
Versus Liv, I'm still trying to figure out why she was drinking during
right.
summer. Like, what happened there?
Yeah,
What happened
yeah,
to the PTSD? The girl was ducking behind because chairs was being moved. Yet she just fine and dandy now.
and yeah, I completely agree, and
And then when they mentioned
yeah,
the sobriety, I mean, Monda, you seen the tweets.
Yes, I seen the tweets.
I
I
was,
seen the tweets.
I
Right?
was, yeah, you was. I was hot. Like, no, they ain't bringing up the sobriety. Like, y'all didn't care about this for I don't know how many episodes. Now you bring it up, and it was based off of a casual conversation with Jordan that didn't even amount to nothing.
oh
Yes.
my, and why anyway? Let's not. We're gonna get on a whole. This is a whole different conversation.
So,
But yes, this is how Spencer's therapy ended.
Yes. That was his therapy. Was he was supposed to talk about himself and make sure he's not like responsible for everybody's
yes,
happiness
he's supposed
and
to choose
choices
himself.
and dreams.
Yeah,
But we saw that didn't happen and last
It
long.
didn't happen.
we saw that it happened immediately
Right.
after, when he told
You can take
Olivia
this stuff by
that
yourself.
she had to take the next step on her
Yes,
own. And then the very next episode he was back to his
yes, he
superhero
was, and
ways.
I did not get that.
Not at all. And people, and
at
I
all.
loved the people in the comments was like, but he needed to take care of himself, Manda, during that time. I said, but what happened right after that? He didn't take care of himself.
He
So help, but
didn't.
then you get dead silence. Like you can't just say he was taking care of himself. Then with Jordan, you go completely ignore it. Like, come on now. Look at the whole full, like the full weight of what was shown to you and understanding of that. So,
Olivia really said, "Can you give me a ride
oh,
home?"
can you come with?
No.
He's like, nah. He's like, nah. I can't do that right now.
I
I don't.
I Carmen always asks me when am I gonna let that go, and every time I think about it again, I'm like, what is wrong with
I
it?
don't remember what I said in my review, but I don't think I was mad because he let her go.
So me and Lexi,
Oh, so the thing
go ahead,
is,
Lexi. I'll let you
yo, go
explain.
ahead.
'Cause-
But like, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. The thing is, we're not mad that he let her go. It's the way in which he
Right.
did it.
Okay.
It's she this was the first time she came to somebody and had asked for help, and she had been relapsed for basically for a month, like for way longer than anybody knew. It
Mm-hmm.
was for months, it was before the summer, etc. And you're the first person she's just like admitting. Like, think about that in comparison to like Layla giving him a call. Think about that in terms of Jordan saying like, can you help me with this thing? And yes, she was wrong, but she had already come to the conclusion that she was wrong.
Yes.
And there's a time for everything. And even if he didn't go with her physically, the fact that he wasn't just like, let me give a call to your family, like, let me get my mom to drive you. Uh, any of those things, just it didn't sit right with
Yeah, it
me.
didn't seem like it.
And then for the writers to not have him address it until basically they're getting together, uh, yeah, didn't sit
And
right with me.
That's
and then
why. Go
yeah,
ahead, Palmer.
go ahead, Pierre Ray. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say that's why. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I threw in the towel basically because it was too many inconsistencies for me
Right.
personally. Like, it was a lot of stuff that was. I guess we were just supposed to guess that happened. Like, apparently, I guess Spencer developed so much in counseling, and a lot of stuff was said that was unsaid in this time. So when he let her go, I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of these plot holes. I'm just gonna roll with it.
Yeah. It was yeah, and for myself, and I can say with Lexi when he brought it up, and the first person he brought it up was in 18 and was with Coop and Patience about like her sobriety, and it was
Oh
not with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he brought it up with them first, and
He
then
brought it up
Liv
there.
had to ask him like, "Why did you pull back?" And then he talked about her sobriety, but then at that point there was no conversation in that big gap. And like I
Yes,
left you in 9, and then this is what you're coming up with in 18. Where was these conversations? Where was this development? And I love the hardcore All American fans and the hardcore Spencer fans was like, well, he did this off screen and everything. I'm like, I'm not playing in that sandbox anymore. Like I'm not
yeah,
doing that guessing game in the sandbox. I'm only going to go with what is given to me on my television.
yep.
And that is
That's
what we can, that is only thing I can assess at that moment. Because a lot of people could come with theories off of like screen and everything, but I want to know
mm-hmm.
exactly, even if you tell me or he presents it, but what is it and what did it look like? And we knew
That's
from 9 until 18, they didn't talk about sobriety because even in 13, it was about Black Lives Matter and grace. It was nothing about how you doing and all of that. So yeah, I call that an alternate universe. Do not give me on that rant because I will
Well,
go.
yeah, and you know this too is that all I said was honestly they set it up perfectly for him to just say, I did not know how to
Yes,
talk about this with you. I did not know how to be there for
right.
you
And they should, and if
during
they added
this.
those lines, it would have been
They
great.
just they he literally should have just added those lines, and then it would have been like, okay.
hey, but you see how
But they
they
did not.
handled the Coop and Spencer's situation.
Yeah,
They
and how
didn't.
they got them
Mm,
back together.
that's
So yeah,
true.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you give them advice, and then everything's all good.
yep.
That was pretty much season 3. Like, it was a lot of half stepping everywhere, and
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know if it was like different writers from season 1 and 2 to 3 because it felt like that. And I think I said that in the first episode. I was like, these characters feel like it's their first time meeting each other.
And funny is the episode 1, NK wrote that, so that says a lot.
Okay.
Yep, she wrote that on her own.
See, I didn't. I honestly, episode 1, writing wise, I did not have a problem with. I did not have a problem writing wise until episode,
I would say 8.
like until the latter half of the season, pretty consistently.
Oh, I came in hot.
Oh yeah, you did.
Oh, you came in hot. Like you did not like.
No, because I was like, yo, the characters seemed different. The pacing was quick as heck. I'm like, why are you rushing? You got a whole season.
Yeah.
And then it was a whole lot of like, I'm like, why is people doing this? Why are they getting an attitude at this? Like, weren't y'all just cool half a second ago? Why is Olivia jumping to Asher's arm? like, I'm still not over that.
Well, and if you want to know why Olivia jumped into Asher's arms, please go and listen to
Season 4?
To us breaking down the After Love Confessions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
After the Love Confessions episode, we break down why we think that she jumped into Asher's arms.
We gave the QT.
Yeah, I'm about to go check that out
because
I'm still like, yo, what is that? What is that? I don't get it.
That was me. That was me being like, what is that? Was Spencer at the end of episode 9.
Yeah.
But anyway, what were you gonna say, Wanda?
I was just it's interesting because all of us have like very different like thoughts on the season. And Lexi and I usually align with each other. K-Ray and I, like, we go at each other in the comments. Because he particularly likes to call me out in videos when he wants to talk about Liv. But that's okay.
I only called you out once.
You called me out
Maybe
twice.
twice.
I heard, twice. Don't play me. But it's very much so annoying that whatever our thoughts of the show, it has guided us to start speaking about it, right? In this real time in different ways in these different platforms.
That's NK's genius.
I'm not.
He knows how to create some conversation.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna let Lexi get that to NK's genius. And so I always say the reason why I talk about it so much is because of people like Lexi and K-Ray and fans of the show, and my crew. That's who gets me to continue to talk about it and look at it in different ways. So I want to say thank you, Lexi, for allowing me to do these podcasts, and K-Ray, thank you for finally talking to me. And not just be
I was gonna say thanks for being on the podcast, so that's a good transition to that. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me.
We gotta get you on an episode review.
Oh, now that's my bag.
That's his bag. Hey Ray, you need to get me on your channel because I would love to have it out with you on some of these things. But that's okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna start doing that.
Yes, please get me on because you and I on your channel will be interesting. Because people can go look at our comments.
Those channel collabs where it's just like, go listen to our video and
to this video. No, this is great.
Thanks for listening to Film Study, an All-American podcast. Quick thing, if I get to 500 subscribers on YouTube after this video airs and before the start of the season on October, is it 25th, 24th, one of those dates, I will release an extended version of my conversation with K-Ray and Manda. So, there's your challenge, but as always, stay tuned for the next episode.